Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the February POHR Hope Ride Enrichment series. Really excited to have a great conversation today about training and preparation for longer cycling events like the POHR Hope Ride. I'm super excited also to have some guests with us tonight from the Philly Bikeathon, one of ACS's other endurance cycling events. Because really what you're going to hear tonight is not specific to POHR, and this is really great information, whether you're doing POHR, Philly Bikeathon, or any other sort of endurance cycling events this summer. I think you'll have a lot to learn here tonight. So really excited to have you all with us tonight. I want to just welcome everyone. Just a quick introduction for me. My name is Stacy McGrath, my husband Darrell McGrath. We're going to be your hosts for our panel discussion tonight. We are the chairs of the POHR Hope Ride, and just excited to be here with you tonight. Just by way of quick introduction, I first got involved in POHR in 2008 as a rider. So I've been around for a number of years, and
I got involved in 2018, so
so also been around for a handful of years. I think this picture of us was from 2018. I think was our first time I got to do POHR with this guy, which was a very special moment there. So
right up that hill in Worcester.
Yeah. But we're excited to be here and share tips and training. And just to let you all know up front, I see a lot of new people and guests with us tonight, so I don't necessarily know everyone's cycling level, but I know one of the biggest things I hear from new riders is that they're concerned about getting ready to ride this much in time for POHR. So I just want to quickly share that, like, the year that I did POHR, at this point in February, I didn't even own a bicycle and hadn't been on one in 10 years, so I didn't get a bike until like the end of April that year. So if you're here on this call, you're way ahead of things as far as having time to plan and prepare and get ready for a really great POHR experience this summer. Before we dive into our panel discussion, though, those of you who have been with us on our enrichment series calls before know that we like to start by spotlighting one of our riders or volunteers or supporters to just come and share what POHR means to them and why they ride or why they volunteer or why they're involved. So I'm really excited before we kick off our panel tonight to introduce Carrie Jarvis, who's going to share a little bit about her story and what POHR means to her. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can all focus on Carrie during this. But Carrie, if you would take yourself off mute and just share a little bit about your story, that'd be great.
Good. Hi, Pan fans. I'm Carrie Jarvis.
How's it going?
Hi there. So I've known one of my teammates, well, she hasn't ridden in a couple of years, but for a number of years, and I was always in absolute awe of these people that could ride across the state of Ohio on a bicycle. I had enjoyed cycling, 30, 40, 50 miles at a time, but never quite that far. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2019. And I was really lucky in that I live in Northeast Ohio. So all of my critical care is within 30 minutes, 35 minutes tops. So I got really lucky, but I couldn't even imagine what it would be like to have to go to treatment and live away from your family and have to stay in a hotel or try to find an Airbnb or something like that, and then go through treatment and deal with all of the things surrounding that. Treatment is tough enough as it is. So knowing what this ride is for, it became very, very important for me at that moment. And I knew that once I was done with cancer treatment, that was like one of my first goals, was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I signed up as a rider in 2020. Of course, we didn't get to ride that ride because of COVID, but I did manage to hit the dynamo that year and was able to ride a leg in the relay, and then have participated the last couple of years. This year, due to some unforeseen circumstances, I'm actually going to be volunteering. I might ride one day, but mostly I'll probably be doing the volunteer thing. But the really cool thing is not only are these people, they're now really, really good friends of mine, but it's like having a big giant family. Like, I have this whole cycling family, and we're all looking for one goal, and that's just to make life easier for cancer patients, and to me, that's there's nothing more important than that. And it's not about the miles, it's about the fundraising. And I don't, I'll be honest with you, I don't ever ride all of the miles. I've never once ridden all of the miles, but it's still fun to participate with your family, with your friends and your family, and that's what this is.
Thank
That's it.
you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Really appreciate you sharing tonight, Carrie. It is definitely a family, and we're happy to celebrate you as a survivor, as one of our champions of hope, alongside so many others. And I think that's one of the things that's always been so inspiring to me about Pan Ohio. You know, I'll be honest, I thought I was going to do this once and it was a cool challenge and that would be it. But once you meet the people and you get involved with this family of people and you meet people that are survivors riding right alongside you, it's so inspiring that it just certainly brings us all back year after year. So thank you for being here. Cheers to you for kicking breast cancer's ass, and cheers to you
Yep,
for helping
thank
other
you.
people do the same along the way. So really
Happy to
appreciate
help.
you being here tonight. Couple of housekeeping items. So Olivia just mentioned it in the chat. I want to call this out in case someone didn't see this in the chat. She's going to be taking attendance for us tonight, and that's kind of a twofold thing. You know, one, if you are a registered Pan Ohio rider, you're going to get 5 incentive points just for joining us tonight, which you can redeem later in our Pan Ohio Hope Ride store. But we're also going to have a raffle at the end. So even if you're not part of Pan Ohio, we want to make sure you get in that. And we're going to send out a little swag basket of some Pan Ohio or Determination swag to one winner. Plus, we're going to raffle off some additional incentive points for one of our riders later. So we want to make sure that Olivia is able to capture good attendance for that and for the raffle. So yeah, if your full name's not on there and it says like, you know, iPhone or something, if you could just send a direct message to the chat instead of to where it says everyone, you pick out of the drop down Olivia Lenhard and send her a quick message with your full name. Or also, if there are 2 of you together, you know, I think we're pretty good at knowing, like with Bill Wolahan, probably Lori Wolahan's there too. You know, she knows to put Darrell down with me. But if there are 2 of you logged into one Zoom room there, I'll let Olivia know that too, so she can get a complete list of everyone. That would be great. And again, if you could keep yourselves on mute for the most part, that would be great, but we want this to be interactive. So as we talk to our panelists, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Darrell and I will be monitoring that and asking those questions to our panelists if they don't see them. And then, you know, if you have some other tips that you want to add on or other conversation you have, feel free to keep that chat going. And toward the end, if we have some time, we can let some other people come off mute and share and ask some questions as well. So with that, let me share my screen again. I am excited to introduce our panelists. So I'll just put up this photo quickly again. We'll turn this off so you can focus on the panelists, but I'm super excited. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and share their bios, but we're really excited to have Bob Duncan with us tonight and Maria del Pilar Vazquez. Bob, maybe some of you have met by now, is actually our newest staff partner with ACS, but he comes to us with a wealth of coaching experience as well. Like I said, I will let Bob and Maria both share their own backgrounds and highlights, but with that, I'm going to jump right in. And actually, I'll start with that. You know, let's start with you, Bob. If you could just give yourself a quick introduction, maybe let us know how you got into cycling, and then give us a little bit of your background on coaching. That would be great.
Sure. My name is Bob Duncan, and I got into cycling for a girl. She lived about 30 miles away from me, and I was 14, and I had learned to ride 60 miles in a day really fast. So long after she was out of my life, the bike stayed in my life and kind of became a mainstay. It was peace of mind and comfort in a lot of places. I've been blessed to ride all over the world, raced all over the world. And in one of my chapters of life, I picked up coaching, started working with some really good athletes, and have been blessed to have a world record holder and a handful of pro athletes that do really well. But my happiest coaching experience was with Team in Training. I started the cycling program and the triathlon program in Southern Ohio, and to see people go from 0 to, you know, either a 100-mile ride or a Olympic distance triathlon was really, it's way cooler than working with the pro people. Straight up, it's fun.
Hey, sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to ask you if you have some information about the Grand Tours in France that happened. Like, you know, like how, like the 3-week course about doing 3,500 kilometers.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that.
the Grand Tour in France, like the bike
Oh.
race?
I've never coached a Tour de France athlete. I've coached a couple of pro cyclists, but mostly I've been triathletes. But if you want to talk sometime, I follow the race all the time. I know a lot of the riders. So yeah, it'd be
Yeah,
very
thank you.
That's fun. Yeah. Yeah. And feel free to reach out. He's bob.duncan@cancer.org too. I won't give anyone's personal email addresses, but since he's an ACS employee, I don't feel bad throwing that out there. You guys can follow up on that. But yeah, Maria, do you mind sharing a little bit about how did you get into this? And Bob, I didn't know that you did this for a girl at first. Heart emoji. Super cute. Maria, how about you? How did you get into cycling? And can you share a little bit about your bio and background?
Yeah, so Bob, I was the opposite. So I was running away from a guy, and that's how I got into cycling. I make a joke about it now, but yeah, I was going through a very, very rough moment in my life, and cycling became like my whole world. Then I got the opportunity to be, I went straight into long distance, like what we call ultra distance. And had the great opportunity to be invited to be part of a 6-women team that did the 21 stages at the tour for the first time. Because in the past, women only did, I think they had a Tour de France for women, but it was like 7 or 9 stages, and then they stopped. So we just, decided to train. We were sponsored by Major Brands and decided to tackle that adventure. And it was amazing. It taught me how much your body can go through. So I had that opportunity, and I think that was a pivotal moment in my life. As after that, obviously people started asking, and I decided to become a coach. And I agree with Bob. I love putting smiles on people's faces, and watching someone go from 0 to even like their first 12 miles or their first 25 miles. That is just mind blowing. So that's what I do basically. I coach, and I do a lot of ultra distances, mainly 500 miles. And now I am venturing into ultra mountain biking. So yeah, that's another toy that I got recently. So but this coming weekend, my race will be gravel. So yeah, and all
Nice.
around.
That's awesome. Thank you. And thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you guys for having me.
And then I just want to say too, obviously Bob and Maria have some impressive credentials and accomplishments, and sometimes it's like, whoa, super elite athletes here. Just want to remind you of what Carrie said, that it's okay if you don't complete all the miles with Pan Ohio too. We have an awesome support team. We just want to give you tools so that whatever level you're at, we have some very elite athletes that ride with us. We have Brent Evans, who during our virtual year decided to just go flat out cannonball and ride 328 miles at once in 19 hours at one extreme. And then there's a lot of us that are a lot more casual about riding, and we do what we can and have a support team. But we want to give you plenty of tools so that wherever you are, you can have your best Pan Ohio this summer and keep it safe and fun for yourself. So with that, I guess I want to start with what do you wish someone had told you before your first longer event? I think maybe you're that person that's ridden your first 12 miles or your first 20 miles, but you've got this first big ride coming up. Maybe your first metric century or your first century. Maria, we'll start with you. Do you have any advice for someone that's facing like that first daunting longer ride?
I actually don't like to know anything about my rides. I think that when you don't know, you go with a different mindset. But I remember going from 0 basically to 100 miles, and I thought it was the end of the world. And definitely, I wish everybody would have told me a lot of things, including, it is okay to go at your own pace, or you gotta hydrate. I was dead last for that ride, and I remember finishing with a smile, the biggest smile. I still remember that picture. But yeah, I think food. There were a lot of things that I wasn't told, like feeding. Feeding for me is the most important thing. And then hydration and food, I will say. That's about it.
Yeah, I want to come back to all those topics in more detail, actually. But Bob, what about you? Is there what do you wish you had known that you did not know before your first long ride?
little issues become very large issues if you don't address them immediately. My shorts are slightly uncomfortable at 20 miles means they're going to be insufferable at 80, and you're going to take them off at 90 and ride naked the rest of the way because it gets real bad real fast. So address the little issues.
So you've been forewarned. If you're behind Bob and like mile 20, he's kind of wiggling a little bit in his seat, you might want to get out ahead of him, mile 80.
That sounds like things I've heard you say before too, though, about the little things.
It's
adding up.
true. It's true.
Hey
And
Bob, I have a question. You said that you hold the world record. I was actually wondering what that world record actually was.
No, I do not. I've coached the athlete who has the world record at Ironman on the bike, and on the legitimate Ironman course, he went 4 hours and 1 minute for 112 miles. So it's about 28 mile an hour without drafting.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about bike fit, since you mentioned it, Maria, and the little things, because I think this goes on with what you said, Bob, too. And I know you've helped people with bike fit a lot. For those of us that are maybe either new to cycling or if you just got a new bike, what do you recommend? What is the importance of that bike fit, Bob?
So when I had the retail store, we always looked at bike fit like buying a suit. You know, if you are going to buy a suit, you have to know for what you're going to use it for and where you're going to use it. So you don't buy a heavyweight double-breasted wool suit to do outside sales in Miami, Florida in the summertime. Similarly, if you're going to do endurance mountain biking, you don't buy a skinny tired road bike with rim brakes. So we always used to say fit frame wheels parts. And if you look at the fit part, look at it like a suit. You wouldn't spend $300 on a suit and not have somebody at least take up the inseam and make the waist fit properly. If you're going to spend thousands of dollars on a bike, somebody should tailor that to fit your needs and your body.
And I'm going to throw in one extra little thing to that. I always say, never do anything new a month from the event. You know, if you're going to buy new shoes, new cycling shorts, bike, handlebar tape, anything, that last month before the event, don't change anything up. Unless you absolutely have to. I mean, if something is like not working, then you've got to address that. But you want to already have things dialed in. So these next few months are very important to get that bike fit and make sure that you're talking to someone that's going to help you dial everything in. And your nutrition.
That real fast, and then sorry, Maria, and then I'll jump out. When you said have everything dialed, once you know it too, take some measurements and write them down or put them in your phone so that if something happens and your bike gets moved, changed, whatever, you know, the day before you get on the bike, you can put it back to the right measurements.
That's so classic me, forgetting where my saddle's supposed to be, and I had to take it out for some reason or another, and then I forget where it's supposed to go back to and have to figure it all out again.
I like a lot of bike shops that use computers to, you know, they use cameras to figure all that stuff out. They have that stuff in the computer too. You know, make sure you get a printout of that just in case they lose that off their computer.
Anything you'd add on that, Maria, from your perspective and experience?
Yes, every person that approaches me, I will always say, pay whatever amount for somebody to actually do a pro fitting the minute you get a bike. It doesn't matter what the bike needs. The second thing you need to do is a proper fitting. And I'm going to add to the fact that if you have everything dialed in, that includes your food. Do not try anything new a week prior to the race or during the race. So that includes the food. So if you don't have any issues with what you're eating right now, stick to it. Do not change it the day of the race.
Right.
But
Well,
that's an investment that you should do. Like, go to a feeder and get yourself fitted.
I'm gonna ask you a question then. When you get your food dialed in, this is a question for both of you. When you get your food dialed in early, or maybe it's something that you know works for you and it's worked for you for years, how do you avoid getting bored with that food or just sick of it? I mean, I've been there, and I've been there during the event where it's like, I just can't look at one more gel. I can't, I mean, I burned out on Cliff Bars like 10 years ago, and I still can't even stand the look of the wrapper. I'm over it. So how do you keep it fresh, even though you have it figured out?
I will say, and this I learned recently because I have been in a very long quest to dial in the food. And unfortunately, what works in one race may not work for the next race. So you need to have options, number one. And number two, this is how I do it now. I don't go, for example, I may crave during the race vanilla Oreos, but then on another race, I may crave chocolate Oreos. So what I do now is I focus on texture. I will have soft, crunchy, salty, sweet, warm, cold. So I will focus on all those things because that's the main thing that you will probably be craving instead of like specific foods. I also work a lot with real food. And because my races are so long, I have dialed in a liquid diet as well. Because it's easier for me to keep riding and somebody hand me bottles all the way through. But then I also learned that temperature affects. So if it's cold at night, 2 a.m. in the morning, I don't want my liquid food. So I have found ways to alternate also based on my cravings and also temperature.
No, that makes sense. And I think, just to kind of tie that back, I think there's also, from my perspective on Pan Ohio, a little bit of a difference too between a race and needing to be at your peak performance nonstop versus a touring ride like Pan Ohio. I think you can get away with a little bit more variety along the way. But I totally agree, like, Maria, that variety, it's like, oh, I know I need salty or sweet or this, and I know kind of the broad categories of foods that I can tolerate well and still ride on, but still not get totally sick of Cliff Bars being the only thing I eat, because I know I can afford to mix it up a little bit more, maybe even stop to have a real food lunch for a while if I take a break, since we're not racing. It gives you a little bit more flexibility on a tour, but you definitely want to know if there's something you're not going to react well to, that you know to avoid that and kind of know what categories of food to eat. So we talk about, nutrition and all that. How much should you be eating while you're riding? Bob, you want to take a first crack at that?
Yeah, so, and again, you hit the nail on the head with knowing the event that you're doing, but in general, your body can't take in more than 2 times your lean body mass in calories while you're exercising and actually process it. So, for example, if your lean mass, you took your fat off, was 150 pounds, your body's only going to be able to absorb about 300 calories an hour anyway. So, and then when we look at what we're doing for like Pan Ohio, I think, eat what you want, make sure you eat at every stop, but if you're not really hungry, you don't need much. There's going to be 10 to 20 miles to the next stop, and there's going to be plenty. And then your body also handles food differently at the intensity level at which you're exercising. A higher intensity race effort will probably dictate that you have a liquid diet for, as long as 10 or 12 hours of a race. Like the guys and gals who I work with who are going really fast, they're liquid for 8 to 10 hours, and that's all they have. They might have a gel, but generally their diet's liquid. If you're going ultra events like Ram, you're going to eat real food, and you're going to have a variety of real food. Your body's going to tell you what you need. And I think Pan Ohio is one of those things where we're going to be going at a low enough intensity that you should eat what sounds good and have multiple varieties, and I think Maria hit the nail on the head for that.
Yeah, agree. Listen to your body.
So what you're saying is, if I eat a bag of peanut M&Ms at every single stop, it makes sense why I'm sick of peanut M&Ms by the end, because I'm not actually burning off those peanut M&Ms. I got.
I don't think you get tired of peanuts.
10 miles.
I don't think you will ever get tired of M&Ms.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Like, I'm like, get sick of peanut M&Ms.
That was a wrong example.
Well, I seriously though, Bob, I think it's a very common thing with anyone that's ever done Pan Ohio, that this is an event where you actually finish weighing more than when you started. I've had that experience every single time, and I have heard anecdotally that most people actually end up gaining weight on Pan Ohio. So.
Correct. Yeah, we take care of you. If you're new to Pan, Ohio and joining us for the first time this year, and I would bet I could say the same for every other ACS endurance.
100%. I love peanut M&Ms.
Yeah,
Hold on,
they're gonna take care of you and have all
I have a
kinds of
question.
food at your nutrition stops. What about hydration? Maria, how much water do you drink with whatever food you're choosing?
So I'm gonna go on a limb here saying this. I have learned also, but keep in mind, Bobby's already laughing. Keep in mind that, like you said, I mean, the intensity at what you do, the event, and how long is it, and the temperature, and how actually you're feeling through the ride determines a lot of things. So you may have everything dialed in, and then race day, like nothing that you worked on works. When it comes to water, I am very mindful about drinking water, and I'm at a stage now where my body is not, it doesn't know how to thermoregulate as it used to in the past. And I don't get as thirsty. So people drink usually when they get thirsty, but I don't get as thirsty. So I'm being a little bit more mindful about the drinking, the water drinking. Now, people believe anytime you do some solid, you do need that water for digestion. So you can consider after everything that you like, you eat something, just grab a sip of water. But I have also learned that it depends on several aspects, or, you know, like temperature, for example. And I do have an athlete, and here's where I'm going to go on a limb, that she did liquid diet for 508 miles, and she did not do water at all. Now, in her drink, I mean, obviously it's diluted in water. So I decided to try it one time, and it was a short race, and it worked for me with that specific brand of powder mixed into the water. I'm not saying go do 300 miles without water, but I think it's just being mindful and do not wait until like you're dying out of thirst. But the rule I will say will be, basic rule will be to have a sip of water every time you have like solid foods, like you ingest solid foods. I don't know if, Bob, you want to go more into details of like specifics.
I have a question for Bob. So are you just a coach, or like have you ever biked before?
Could we actually throw questions in the chat if you don't mind, and we'll put them
Oh,
on,
yeah,
because I
my
think
bad.
Bob was about to add something to Maria's comments on water.
Oh yeah. Also, Bob, how are you
that,
that
and-
bald?
What's that? No, that's fine. I don't want to interrupt this. I think Bob had something to add to what Maria was just talking about, but we'll definitely make sure any questions in the chat get thrown out there, if you don't mind.
Okay, so there's been tons and tons of studies on water and electrolyte drinks and calorie drinks with electrolytes and protein ratios with the carbohydrates and electrolytes, and you can go down millions of rabbit holes. I think one of the things that I would say is, what we need to encourage everybody to do is to ride often and get used to doing what you're going to do on event days on those rides. You might be somebody who can go an hour and a half and then you chug a whole bottle. You might be somebody who needs to sip every 15 minutes. Expose yourself to various terrains, various weather conditions, and see what works for you. And then the key is to be mindful of those things. Maybe write them down if you need to. But if you're the guy who got back from a very hot ride and you had half a water bottle in an hour and a half and you've got a headache and you feel like crap, remember that. Don't do it again. It's bad. If you want to go down specific science stuff, there's testing you can do, like certain rides at certain temperatures with certain humidity, and you weigh yourself before and after, and you kind of have to weigh your urine if you pee during that. And it's kind of a little bit of overkill for where we are, I think.
Way too much trouble.
Yeah, practice and be mindful. Like, practice everything and see what works for you.
Yeah, let me ask you this. I think, one bit of advice I always heard, to your point, Maria, don't wait until you're thirsty to take a drink. But someone once told me an easy, like, if you're riding with people and you see someone else reach for their water bottle, reach for yours and take a sip. It's an easy way to not have to think about it yourself. And just anytime you see someone else take a sip, take a sip. But I think maybe the thing to talk about with us is like, what are some of the signs of bonking or dehydrating that you can look out for to kind of have that in yourself, or even as we ride together, we like to look out for others. So what are some signs either in yourself or that you might observe in other people that maybe they're not eating or drinking enough and they might be bonking or getting dehydrated? Any thoughts on that?
Well, definitely the headache. I will say it's the main thing. I personally get nauseated. And the moment I get nauseated, I get mad at myself because now I know that I'm behind. And dizziness. So if you actually see somebody on the bike, like, you know, kind of like not going on a very straight line, that might be a sign of. I believe I had one time I was riding, temperatures were over 115 degrees, and my watts were like 90, which is low, and my heart rate was almost at 200. So that kind of thing, also like seeing weird numbers, can be indicative of certain things. They had to pull me over and cool me down, so cool me off.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah.
Bob, anything you'd add to that? How can we look out for ourselves and each other? And like, what are some of the signs that say, hey, maybe we need to get this person's either some medical attention or something?
So I think one of the things that I'll have some athletes do who are newer is I'll set a timer to just beep every 15 minutes and they take a sip on their watch, just a countdown timer. In the Marine Corps has always been an incubator for heat exhaustion, heat stroke. Like, we're the lab rats that everybody uses. Like, if you look at all the studies on heat exhaustion, heat stroke, it's only Uncle Sam's misguided children. So conversations are a really good way to tell. Like, if you just talk to somebody and they don't sound like themselves or they're confused, they're really far gone. If you notice that somebody's slowing like precipitously and they may not be talking at all, but like, you know, as Maria said, the more into the sport you have, the more tools you have to do it. And we call it decoupling, when your heart rate decouples from its zone in the power zone. But you can just tell that by watching somebody who you normally ride equally with, and all of a sudden they're falling way off or you're falling way off. That should be a really good indicator that something's off.
Typically on POHR, you're riding around other people. They might not be people that you know. You might be meeting them for the first time, but communication is really important. I'm a firm believer that when you say to someone, you know what, I think I'm quitting, you've already made that decision in your head maybe 15, 20 minutes before you even say anything. So if you're not feeling well, you're feeling off, or you're feeling like giving up, or you're feeling like you need water, you're feeling like you need to pull over and find some shade or something, you can say that to whoever you're with, and they're going to support you on this ride. And it's very important to get to know the people that are around you, so that way you can look out after each other. And I mean, we both had the experience of riding with someone that we didn't know, and we could see their ride deteriorating over the course of the day, and it's very concerning. I mean, this particular person, not only did they slow down, but then they would have these insane bursts of energy where they would catch back up with us. It was very erratic. And that, you know, it's just all the things that the both of you are saying. I just wanted to kind of echo that.
Yeah. And, you know, the nice thing too on Pan Ohio, and I know a lot of the other ACS events have support as well, is we do have a medical team that rides along with us, along with our other support team too. So we were able to get that individual into an ambulance for some fluids and a rest. So anyway, that's all great tips. And again, my apologies for the interruption of our uninvited guests there. The dangers of sharing a Zoom link. Yeah. But hopefully that will take care of that. I want to kind of switch gears a little bit. I think all of that on nutrition and hydration is great advice, and we could probably spend a whole hour on just that. But I think, you know, bottom line, experiment before the ride, drink before you're thirsty. But I want to talk a little bit more about, you know, training plans and what we can do now. You know, I think if you're a registered Pan Ohio rider, or if you want, you could just get it off our website. There's a 24-week training plan out there designed to get you ready to complete the 4-day event comfortably. Even if you haven't started that and we're within 24 weeks, you could kind of ease into it and then jump ahead. but it's a little hard right now. You know, we've had some unseasonably warm weather, but I think a little bit more winter is coming. So do either of you have any advice? Like, what do you do in the winter when maybe you can't get outside on your bike, especially if you don't have a trainer indoors? Any winter training advice for us, Bob?
Well, you threw a wrinkle in that when you said if you don't have a trainer. I mean, that's just fundamentally like, no. So one of the things that we have people do anyway, because sometimes cycling tends to be quad biased, and depending on how that person's set up on their bike, they'll tend to work the anterior part of their legs, so the front side, and the posterior doesn't get to work. And the posterior glutes and your hamstrings are really the strongest muscle group in your body. So one of the things that you can do to prep for any cycling event and any real event at all is walk up steep hills. And walking down hills is actually equally better because it's an eccentric muscle contraction. So if I've got 15 minutes and I don't know what I want to do with myself, I find a staircase. And that would be quality cycle training, is to go up and down the steps. And you don't have to do it fast. And you don't have to skip 2 steps. Just go up and down. And that would be what I would do if I didn't have a trainer. I would walk and I would do steps or steep hills.
No, that's great advice.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, for those of us that have indoor trainers, that's great. You can get on it, but not everyone does. Maria, anything else that you do like during the winter? You know, what I don't want is somebody to say I don't have a trainer, therefore I can't start training for Penn, Ohio until the weather's nice. Like, what else do you recommend that people can do now?
Well, I would have freaked out without a trainer, by the way, but yeah. I do. I mean, this is how important the trainer is for me. I even do trainer, or I do trainer even if it's okay to go right outside. The benefits of training using a trainer is just insane, and people just, it makes me sad when I hear people say, oh, it's so boring, I can't stand it, and blah blah blah. I'm like, well, when I am at 400 miles in my race at 3 a.m. in the morning with sleep deprivation, I am happy that I used the trainer. I will go to a gym or somewhere that might have a stationary bike. I mean, gyms nowadays are ridiculously inexpensive, and that's what I will do. I mean, Bob had a great idea about the staircases. I hate stairs. So, but yeah,
We all have something we hate, right?
You hate stairs, we hate trainers.
yeah,
You gotta find something.
yeah.
So
But
maybe
yeah, well, mhm.
stay motivated at this time, because I'm that
Yeah.
person. Part of why I fell in love with cycling was being outside in the fresh air. I'm that person that would say, I hate the trainer there. I said what I said. And in fact, just got one like 2 years ago after I told you I've been doing Penn, Ohio since 2008. I was always that person that didn't start riding. I mean, we ride a little bit year round. You know, maybe that's it too. You know, how can you prepare yourself to ride if you just want to be outside in cooler weather?
That's what I was going to say, is generally speaking, unless it's raining, I'll go outside. Like I so much like to be outside when I ride, and I do use the trainer year round, but I generally use it for workouts where I need a controlled environment. But if left to my own devices, I'm outside, and you don't have to dress as warmly as you think. Booties are a must for over your shoes. A good pair of mittens or gloves, a balaclava that fits under your helmet nicely. Sometimes a buff will do, and a couple of layers. And normally by the time you get 15 or 20 minutes in, you're more than warm enough. So I would again go to experiment. Leave your house, go out 4 or 5 miles and see if you're too hot or too cold. If so, loop back. You got a 10-mile ride in, and you learn something about your clothing and layers for that temperature.
True. Come back, add a layer or ditch a layer, right?
Exactly.
I don't know if she's on the call tonight, but we did one of these programs specifically about winter training with Kathleen Copeland a couple of years ago, and a couple other people, because she commutes every day. You know, Brian Bortz rides every day. We do have riders that get outside every day, and I think it was like there's no bad weather, there's only bad gear. So if you're interested in being outside, because like me, you don't like being inside on your bike, there are ways to get outside on the bike year round too with the right gear. But what about cross training? Someone brought up a question in the chat about strength training specifically. what kind of cross training do you do? Do you have any strength training advice for people that they can do alongside their cycling or their stair climbing?
I do strength, and I do it at home because I refuse to go to the gym because I barely have any time. So adding a trip to the gym will be kind of like stressful, and we want to avoid stress, right? So I do a lot at home, and you don't have to have a gym set. You can do for me, bird dogs, it's amazing. It's an amazing workout that helps a lot of cyclists. Anything for the glutes, and like Bob said, the hamstrings more than the quads, because you're already using your quads basically on your riding. I do a lot of for the exercises for the glutes and for the hamstrings, and I barely use any weights. Of course, there's a moment when I add a little bit more resistance, but you can use bands, and those bands you can find on Amazon like really cheap. So, I mean, and again, I'm training for a couple of races this year, and all that I do is basically at home and with nothing except for a medicine ball, a stability ball, and bands, elastic bands, and you can find those very, very cheap in Amazon.
Yeah, which is good because then you don't need the gym, right? Things you can set up.
Exactly.
What about you, Bob? Any go-to strength training or cross training things that you would recommend?
So this is more age specific and male specific, but I think that it crosses over well. But I think to maximize hormone levels for men, heavy weights, low reps, 3 to 5 reps, as much as you can stand, and only 3 to 5 sets. So my time in the gym, I lifted before I came here. It was 27 minutes. I did a chest set, I did a back set, I did a shoulder set to bomb proof me from swim. I do core every day, and I'm not trying to gain muscle or gain weight. As a matter of fact, the lifting weights helps keep my weight way down because the heavy weights spur testosterone. So by getting my hormone levels closer to where they are when I'm in my 20s, I can lose fat easier and maintain my riding weight easier. So I'm a big fan of, if you have weaknesses, I saw somebody in the chat, like adductors. If you know you're weak in a specific area, that's where you lift weights. Like, fix the things that are, it goes right back to that first thing. The little things become big things. If your VMO is weak and the medial, quad is weak, you're going to get knee problems. So bomb proof that in the gym. And almost all these things don't require weights. I know I said heavy weight, low rep, but that's really easy. If I want to work my chest like that, even if you're a rock star stud, put your feet up on the table, get a real rigid core, and do push-ups, and do them at a 60 count, like 30 seconds down, 30 seconds up. You don't need weights. You can do all these things at home without the gym.
I'm gonna add a little bit. You mentioned it was men, but for those, I'm not scared of sharing my age. For those women already on a certain age where hormones are starting to go all over the place, actually lifting heavy, it's recommended as well. Like he said, short, not going forever on reps, heavy and less repetitions. He mentioned, I believe you mentioned mobility, and also plyometrics, explosive movements like jumps. Again, you don't need a big gym at your house. So for women 50 plus, and I'm in that category, lifting heavy, a lot of plyometrics, mobility, and like he said, focusing on areas. For example, one of my shoulders is kind of weak, so I focus on that shoulder, and anything that has any kind of jump.
Okay, so let's assume, let's say I've kind of like been eating a lot of comfort food this winter and just kind of maybe watching some Netflix or whatever. And, now the weather's getting kind of good and I don't have a gym membership, and pretty confident I can ride 50 miles a day. Maybe if I'm feeling good, I can ride more than that. If I'm feeling terrible, maybe I ride a little bit less than that. And I want to do Pan Ohio. I'm going to do Pan Ohio. And my concern is not so much getting out on the bike and finishing every day, because I already decided, yeah, I'm okay either way. But I am a little concerned about multiple days. Do you have any suggestions for how you pace yourself over a 4-day event if you're trying to, you're just trying to show up? You're not going to do anything special. You know that August is rest. September is more rest. October is you start putting up decorations and Christmas shopping. And,
Yeah, you don't.
and the next thing you know, you're eating comfort food and watching Netflix again. Pan, Ohio is kind of like the summit, and then a very steep decline into torpor. What do you do for those kinds of riders that just want to show up for 4 days and not feel blown out?
Stop the coaches.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in here because
not your type of training.
so
Take a stab at it.
I don't really have experience with this, so there's my caveat. But what I would say is, I haven't trained for as many ultra events as Maria. I've done a couple of really long running events with lots of elevation gain. And you can't actually train the distance that you're going to race because it's just too darn long. So just like with Pan, Ohio, you can't train 4 days for 400 miles because you don't have that time. So what I would do is one of the weeks that I would do in my training block would be very low mileage through the week. And then that weekend I would come back with, in this case, it was a 5-hour run on a Saturday and a 4-hour run on Sunday with eat whatever the hell I wanted after that first one and drink a lot, because I knew I was coming back the next day for it. And then I do a recovery 2 or 3 days, and then I go back into a normal week or 2-week block, and then I do another one of those mega weekends is how I would do it. And I would say that that's probably how I would plan for somebody newer to Pan, Ohio, who's stringing together an hour ride, a 2-hour ride, which is no problem. I would say pick a weekend and launch into a 4-hour followed by a 3-hour on the next day or something like that.
Just to, because there's a tendency to hear 300 miles, even 100 miles and get scared, or, assume that you cannot do it, or, oh my gosh. Just so you have an idea, my training through the week is very short, like literally very, very short, but intense. The easiest thing I think that you can do, it's go on rides, like he said, zone 2, which will be I call them conversational pace, but you can talk, but you'll have to take a moment and kind of like, okay, let me breathe and then talk. If you do those, even if you don't have, a very thorough plan, or you cannot get into anything, let's say, worst case scenario, you cannot go do strength training. I gave you ideas on, things you can actually do at home without any equipment. But if you say worst case scenario, you can't do a lot, just do rides, like you said, back to back. And they don't need to be long. Your body will your body will keep doing it when you're at your event. Like you said, I never trained for 500 doing a 500-mile ride. The most I remember doing maybe was 2 days back to back of 12 hours each, and that hasn't happened in a very, very long time. So your body will follow actually your mindset. But again, trying to do rides, maybe back to back, taking rests, on a third day, that are conversational pace, and you can start with an hour and then, add 30 minutes, and then next week 2 hours and 3 hours. That'll help. And just think about me, like she never goes for a 500-mile race and she finishes 500. So
no, that's great, because I think that is a big concern that people have, is like, I don't have time to go ride that far every weekend. I only have time for short rides. Is that enough to get me ready for a ride like Pan, Ohio? And it sounds like, yes, I think, consistency in the short rides really adds up to just as much as getting out for long rides sometimes, in my experience. Had a couple of questions in the chat about power zone training. I guess, can you talk a little bit more about the zones? I know some people use heart rate monitors, some don't. Heart rate zones, or how you would classify those, or what zone people should be training in if they're into that. Bob, you want to chat about that a little bit?
Yeah, so, and I'm pretty passionate about this. I've been using power meters with my athletes since they first started coming out with the SRMs, like back in the early 90s. And I'm a huge fan of power training, but power training should always be looked at in relationship to heart rate. And here's why. Power is an objective measure of one aspect of what your body is doing. Heart rate is an objective measure of the total load your body is doing. In other words, I can train in 50 degrees at say 250 watts, and my heart rate stays like in the top of zone 2. And that's great. That'd be a really good ride for me. If you ask me to go out and do that at 90 degrees and 60% humidity, I'm going to have a disaster of a ride, because my body has to work to cool itself as well as to make the power. So with most of my athletes, we use power for workouts like you would use the track for a workout for a runner. It's a specific workout with a specific number that we want to hit in controlled conditions. Now, we do watch power through events because we like to see, like Maria talked about her decoupling event. It's a really good indicator that I need that athlete to perform at a certain wattage to complete the course at a certain time. It's math. And earlier somebody asked about the Tour de France, and you can almost predict who's going to win the Tour de France by their functional threshold power and their body weight. It's just physics. You can't really outrun it. What?
Math is hard.
Yeah, math is hard. So the thing is, what I look for is, if you're going to do train by power, you first of all have to know how and perform a couple of really good functional threshold power tests. Second, and most important, is with those tests, you have to correlate the heart rate to that, because there's going to be conditional changes in the real world that are going to demand a change in power. And you can't say, I'm going to ride this course at, the day that my guy set the world record, he averaged 355 watts for 4 hours and a minute. I can't hold that for like 5 minutes. If we asked him any other day of the week to go out and ride that ride, it's not going to happen. He can't hold that power that often. That was a freak fish day. But if we looked at his heart rate and said, tomorrow go ride that same heart rate, he could replicate that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I think, I know that speaks to some of you on this call, and others of us are like, whoa, I just want to ride my bike and have fun, and that's okay, right? I can't say enough that there's, hopefully wherever you are in your level, there's something you can take out of this to take yourself to the next level. I mean, I'll say my first year training for Pan Ohio, I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a heart rate monitor. I did not have a speedometer or odometer on my bicycle. I just went out and rode and explored random places. And that was okay. That also got me ready for Pan Ohio in a few months. So that's okay too. I don't want anyone to feel intimidated by it. I think that's fascinating for Denny, I know, is the one that asked that question in the chat. And I know he's so dialed into those numbers. And I think, that kind of goes hand in hand with the people that are on the trainers too, and can create that controlled environment where you can really push yourself. It's pretty fantastic advice. So thank you for that. That's fascinating.
Well,
Math is scary.
So get away from those people that love their trainers and just can't be torn away from it. Let's assume that the weather is going to get good. We're going into March. It tends to be nice. Spring is calling. The birds are tweeting. The leaves are turning green. We all want to get out on our bikes. And I think one of the things we always emphasize with people that don't ride a lot is that the most important thing, if you're going to focus on one thing, you want to get in that saddle time, because nothing's going to ruin your day or your 4 days more than saddle sores, or just not being used to sitting on that seat for, however many hours a day for 4 days. So if you can identify like a holiday or a weekend or wherever, where you can just, doesn't matter how far you go or how fast you go, just as long as your butt's planted on the seat, you'll get used to it. And that's probably the the most important thing, I think.
So yeah, I want to actually
Yeah.
pose this question to both of you as well as somebody, various genders here. Any other tips other than spending time on the saddle to minimize saddle discomfort? Maria, I'll start with you. Saddle discomfort issues, how do you minimize them?
So I have been riding for so long that I have to brag about the fact that I don't get saddle sores. But,
But
How long does that take?
so when you started,
don't hate me, please. But I mean, and when you get to 400 miles, you're still like, there's some sort of discomfort. So the first thing that I have to say, I have like the same quest that I have been doing for the food, to dial in food as best as I can. I have been also finding a good saddle. Unfortunately, the saddle that works for me doesn't necessarily work for you or for Bob or for anybody else. So the most important thing is that that saddle needs to work for you. Believe it or not, the secret is, for me, it's worse. So you have to find and a good fitter. I think that the first thing, don't think that they will want to sell you stuff just because, but the first thing that they should probably offer you is a saddle. A good fitter should have an array of saddles, and depending on certain things that he will measure, you will be recommended certain saddles. And again, that doesn't mean that when you sit on that saddle, you like it. So there might be like 3 options for you. But let's say we cannot get a fitter, we cannot get the perfect saddle. I use, and now I forgot the name. So I like to use Neosporin. And what was, oh my gosh, anything, I'll remember the word in a minute, but anything that's for, that the hospitals use for bed sores, like sores, works. So I do like a little mix of Neosporin, that lotion, and I actually use it, and it prevents, like if I start getting anything, it prevents it from getting it worse.
And prevention, either, right?
Correct. Keeping the area obviously dry. I know that a lot of people don't like to use their pants super tight, but actually, if you have pants that have that, they're moving a little bit, that might make it worse. So having those pants kind of like tight helps. Trying to keep the area dry, and maybe using a lotion. In my case, I use, like I said, Neosporin, and I'll think about the other one, because that one I learned from somebody that actually holds world records, and it just changed my life.
All right, well, we're going to come back to that then. Go look that up while we hear from Bob on maybe male specific issues, saddle discomfort.
So more,
Throw it all out there tonight.
Most of the same rules apply, I think, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think, you know, when I grew up, we were using leather saddles and we had leather chamois. And at the end of every ride, you would clean your bottom side with witch hazel or rubbing alcohol. So this chamois cream thing still seems like voodoo to me, because I use nothing. So,
you don't use it.
And as far as saddles, I think Maria nailed it, because I can ride pretty much a 2x4 on a stick and I'm okay.
So yeah, that's something you build up to over a long time, right?
Yeah, and I think that
it's, well, that said, I've done over like 8,000 fits on people, and it's not just comfort. So one of the things, like I can put a saddle under somebody and watch a power change at the same cardiac output. It really does affect how you produce power. So when you're looking at something, if somebody tells me they're not comfortable on their saddle, they're not going to be as fast or as powerful over time. So even if the numbers look really good, you have to be comfortable. So what I would recommend is, in this day of Amazon, like as a specialty retailer, when I had a store, I hated returns because now I've got to use product, especially a saddle to deal with.
Yeah.
So I would always sell saddles that the manufacturer would warranty so that I could send them back. And almost every good saddle manufacturer will do that now. Do not hesitate to put 100 miles on a saddle and take it back if it doesn't work. But by the same token, don't give a saddle 20 miles and make a judgment call. Give it at least a handful of rides.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that most of the feedback I get whenever I talk about riding a long distance with someone that never has, it's almost always about the saddle. Uh, and they don't understand how a hard, narrow saddle is actually better than a wide, soft, squishy saddle.
Yeah, right.
But a wide, soft, squishy saddle will kill you on a long ride. But you bring up some interesting points, and going ahead to what you said previously. I mean, obviously you're familiar with the British cycling team and their program of marginal gains, and just making little changes, a bunch of little changes across the board was enough to improve their team to the point where they were able to win the Tour and they were able to just become a powerhouse. I think a lot of us go out on a long ride and maybe we overdo it. We have like bags and we have computers and we're carrying enough food for like 12 people, and we've got
Gallons of water.
we got 3 different things to change it flat, and we don't really need. What advice do you have for maybe riding lean, but riding with the essentials that we need when we start getting on those long training rides that we're going to have to do over the next few months? Do you have a list of essentials? Do you have a checklist or something, or are you just like carry a dollar bill and it's a boot on a flat tire, or it's a
bottle of water
or
at the
it's a
convenience
bottle
store?
of water?
You mean in general or also food and everything? Or just like equipment for?
Obviously,
Yeah.
like during an organized event,
So
the south or that, we're going to have stops along the way to refill your bottles.
And we
get you
encourage
food.
people to travel as light as possible during the event. But when you're self-supported,
on a longer training ride,
Yeah.
what are your essentials you carry with you?
well, okay, hold on. I'm gonna make a pause here because
Find out what the lotion is first.
this is my little baggie.
What's in the bag?
This is
What's in
the
Maria's
bag. This is my personal bag. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I usually have obviously my latex gloves. This is not for the pocket. This is when you have a car behind you following with people helping you, you have this accessible. So I have my latex gloves. So obviously I'm riding through hours and hours, so my hands might not be super clean. I have these cotton pads. And then I have a little bit of Vaseline. I have my Neosporin. There you go. And I do have, this is the lotion. So I don't know if you can see it. Calmoseptine. So this works miracles. I love it, love it, love it. And mixed with the Neosporin, it's just amazing. A thing that I haven't used, but somebody told me that it works. Actually, it's preparation age.
Okay.
Because this is to for anything that's swollen, it'll just kind of like not make it so, but I haven't had the opportunity to use it. I just have it there as a just in case. And then I also have betadine. Some people don't like using these, but I have, man, I'm sharing my secrets. This is not fun.
Exactly.
So these are these is my 3 things that I just do like a little thing and then whoop, put it in there if I need it. Okay.
Yes.
So there are no excuses now.
All right. Bob, what's in your essentials? I will say on Pan Ohio, we do have plenty of chamois butter, which functions similarly in an anti-chafing way for you, and we'll have plenty of it available for you along the way. Bob, what's in your essentials kit to carry with you on a long training ride?
First of all, I think you should only carry what you need or are willing to give away. In other words, there's no sense for you to carry a chain tool if you don't know how to use it or are unwilling to give it away. It depends on what I'm doing. If I'm on the road bike, I normally have in my jersey pocket a CO2 inflator with 2 cartridges, 1 inner tube, all duct tape or electric tape together in a little wad. If I'm riding clinchers, I normally have tubulars, so I have a tubular tire under the seat. I carry enough liquid for 2 hours, and I figure if I can't find something in 2 hours, then I'm in trouble. But I don't carry a lot. I travel very light. If I had the luxury of a car behind me, which I've had a couple times, which is really nice, I carry a lot of Clorox wipes because I just feel like when I get somewhere, the bike, the toilet that I might have to stop at, the porta john on the construction site, I love Clorox wipes. So
Yeah.
kind of, and this is going to be too personal, but it really kills germs in the nether region too. So there you go.
So your Clorox wipes are the equivalent of Maria's latex gloves when things get a little dirty. And,
You don't
again,
need latex gloves. You got Clorox wipes.
supported bride, we will have all of that for you. There's wipes and all kinds of things at Ohio stops. What else? What is our? Feel free to jump in the chat, everybody. What else?
Don't. This is not. By the way, this is not in my pocket when I go ride. FYI. I do CO2. I do instead of like there's a little pump that you can do the pump actually, and then forget the CO2s. I do one because now I go tubeless, which is I refuse to go tubeless, and now I'm every bike it's tubeless, so that's a benefit, especially here in the desert where there are a lot of pokey things. But CO2, the tubes, I usually carry two. I was very, very anal because I was always the one who will put it on and then will blow the first one. So I was always carrying two. And then if you think about it, your bike has two wheels. So bringing two can save you from having a flat on, each one. And the lever. So you can, change but that's basically what I carried. Anything for a flat tire, nothing else. And obviously, my bottles and my food for however long I was going to go for.
Yeah, I'm the same, flat tire stuff too, but if you give me any other tools, I'm not going to know what to do with them anyway. So thanks for the permission to leave those at home, Bob.
Well, I was going to say,
credit card's an awesome idea.
this might give some people some heart palpitations, but there's no point in carrying a CO2 cartridge or a tubeless tire repair kit or whatever if you don't know how to use it. Because out on the side of the road, well, sometimes learning under fire is a great way of learning something, but you probably don't want to learn it, how to use a new tool or learn how to do something for the first time when you have to. It's better to learn it when you can take your time.
Yeah.
So as terrible as this sounds, I highly recommend learning how to change a tire, learning how to change a tube, learning how to patch a tube, learning how to use all your tools at home before you ride, on your own at your own pace, maybe with someone there to help you in
And a
case
lot
you
of
get
shops
stuck.
do clinics too.
Yeah.
So, look for some clinics at your local bike shops.
Yeah.
We may be setting some of those up for Pan Ohio this spring, or be like Feynman and just carry your credit card and your phone a friend.
Yeah, I saw that. And actually I do carry my credit card. I forgot about that. I do my credit card and I do my health insurance card and my driver's license.
Yes.
Because I ride a lot alone,
Yeah.
and we know that there's crazy people out there driving. So if something happens, I have my road ID with all my personal information and allergies and stuff. And then I do those three because if they, knock on wood, but if they have to take me to the hospital, then I have the basic stuff while somebody gets there.
Yeah.
Well, that's perfect. That was the next thing I was gonna say is we all like riding with a wrench. To those of you who don't know, a wrench is slang for someone that knows how to do bike repairs in the field. You ride with a wrench and you never have to worry about it. But a lot of us, sooner or later, we end up having to ride alone. Do either of you have any tips for riding and training alone, especially those longer rides, and especially maybe for those people that are riding more rural areas where they can't count on being able to walk their bike a half mile to a phone at a convenience store or something like that, or maybe poor cell coverage?
If I can chime in here, when riding alone, we all carry our cell phones. Rather than taking or making the assumption that someone's going to be able to access it because most of our phones are locked, if you put in your phone under ICE, that's in case of emergency, it will access that without your phone being unlocked, and whoever arrives on the scene can go right to that, and it'll save valuable time.
Yes.
Yeah, something like that, like the road idea that Maria shared, something so that if, heaven forbid, something happened and someone had to figure out that they could have easy access to who you are and who to contact and what your allergies or things are, super important to safety. Any other safety tips?
I have a, I mean, that is a little bit way out of the, everybody's budget maybe, but I like it because for me, Arizona has a lot of crazy drivers. So Garmin came out with a light that actually tells you, I mean, it doesn't tell you, it just beeps when there's cars behind you. But my Garmin also has the feature that if for whatever reason I fall or get knocked down, the Garmin notices it and then it starts beeping. And if I don't stop it because I'm unconscious or, off the bike or whatever, it'll call an emergency number that I have programmed in the Garmin. So that light, I really, really like it. And now I believe that they came out with one that actually films whatever it's happening behind, which I'm not interested in look at. So I have the other model. I just need to, kind of like know, okay, so there's cars coming. I need to, be careful or
Darrell and I
alert.
invested in those this year too, and it can feel expensive, but we decided, at what investment are worth it, right? And I used to feel like I could hear cars, but more and more people are driving electric vehicles now. Like one too many Priuses snuck up on me before I realized I don't hear cars coming anymore. So yeah, we got the rear light radars too. Bob, anything you'd add to that?
I just want to sing the praises of the radar too. I've had one. I don't have the camera one. I think that's only good for once you get smashed so that they can replay it and see who smashed you. But when it pops up on my Garmin, I just know where a car is. I think if I was going to invest in any luxury item, bike or non-bike, that would be what I want if I'm a cyclist.
So back to training. Any tips for training alone in these situations? We talked earlier about being able to keep an eye on one another and being able to notice when the person you're riding with is acting a little loopy. I think we all act a little loopy when we've been riding by ourselves for 4 or 5 hours or more. Any advice for training alone out there on those long days or short days?
I think Leanne just mentioned something there, very important, telling people where you're going to go, or where you're going to be. There's also now features on the phone and on the Garmin where you can have somebody connected and they know where you are. And obviously if there's a stop that goes for longer than you anticipate, then they can, kind of like call and make sure that you're okay. My athletes, the ones that I coach, they actually, every time they're racing, they send me, links for me to follow them, and I know how they're doing. And if I need to send them a text and yell at them, I will do so. So yeah, there's many things. I personally train alone most of the time, so I invest in those gadgets because, I have sons I want to come back to.
Exactly, because you're worth it. Yeah, great advice. Bob, anything you want to add to that before we move on?
Just the cautionary tale. My last bike wreck was the time that I chose not to use my phone, not to tell anybody where I was, and 6 miles away from nowhere, a mountain bike crash in the woods at night, and I couldn't stand up. So
don't be like Bob.
Yeah, don't be like Bob. Be smart.
Let's learn from Bob, everyone. Yeah, I think about the way I used to ride by myself anywhere and everywhere without anyone knowing, and it's cringy now to think about how much I just went off by myself. Something else just came up in the chat is, listening to things. Someone brought up, Audible books. Maybe people want to listen to music or podcasts or something. What are your thoughts on listening to things and how you can still be safe about it? Leanne just mentioned bone conduction headphones, which totally recommend, because I think it can be, you speak of the, either the dangers or the benefits to how you can listen to things while still riding safely. Bob,
I will always use these. I will never have anything covering my ears. I think that's very dangerous. And these one, actually, I have like 3 of these. I bought, the last one that I bought has the little microphone. And what I do, which you can actually do with regular earbuds, I program on my phone. For example, when I have a car behind me for races, there's typically 3 people there crewing for me. So I program their numbers 1, 2, and 3. because again, at 2 a.m. in the morning, if I'm sleep deprived, hungry, angry, or whatever, I might not pronounce, especially me being Hispanic, the name correctly, and then Siri can go like, sure, what, how to get to how to get to Miami. So this one, I love it because it allows me to not only listen to music, but I can also, you know, kind of connect with my phone and say, hey Siri, call one or call whomever, and I can talk to them, which by the way, I just activated it on my phone. So yeah, talking to people, just no, see, and now she said, she thought I was saying that I need to call Juan Perez VO2.
Hey,
So,
Siri.
so that's why I program my crew people as 1, 2, and 3, because it's easy for me to say one, or, you know, call one, call two, or call three, which you can actually do on a regular ride. I do listen to music, but I don't depend on listening to music to not get bored. But definitely I will never have my ears covered.
Yeah, that's smart. Brian brought up something too, that, you know, there's little speakers you can put on your handlebars too. Nox gear has a good one. And also, you know, speaking of Nox gear, you know, lights, if you think at all, you might not be home, and even during the day, having a flashing rear light is good to catch drivers' attention. Nox gear, Brian's an ambassador for him, he could share a little bit in a minute, but light up vests or anything that's going to make you visible. We'll probably have another panel discussion devoted completely to safety. If we don't have them this year, we will, you know, share recordings of the ones we've done in the past, but that's kind of crossover to make sure you're safe while you're training too, that you're visible. Bob, anything you want to add to that? Or what do you use?
I'm going to be the Scrooge on this one. The only time I'll even wear bone conducting on a bike is on the mountain bike trail. And it might be that I don't notice things as well as other people, but having been hit by a car on multiple occasions, I just don't trust compromising any of my auditory skills. And it might be because I'm a former artillery.
I don't even like having a speaker or being around people, but part of it for me too, not only just for safety, but I enjoy listening to the surroundings. Like, I like hearing my bike wheel spin. I like hearing the birds chirping. I like hearing, like, whatever it is. I like to kind of be engaged in a sensory way with everything I hear around me too. But I think I'm kind of a weirdo like that, and most people want the distraction of a book or a podcast and some music.
Well, I'm upset. So I'm going to ask the follow-up question for Bob. I think it's important to have this discussion because I think a lot of people are very anti or pro speaker or headphones. And I think a lot of people get their riding cues for routes, or they get training cues from a training program through their headphones or on their little tiny screen. Do you have any, I mean, how do you go about it? Do you do preloaded maps when you do a ride, or do you listen to audible cues for training or anything like that?
No, this is going to sound like I'm the oxymoronic rider because I have electric shifting and a power meter. I even have power meters on my mountain bikes. Right? So the guy who says he's not into tech has all these toys, but no, I pretty much put the wind in my face. If it's a ride I haven't done before, I'll either do an old school cue sheet that I'll keep in my jersey pocket, and I'll use the Garmin to just say I'm on this road for 6 miles, and it says I'm at 12 miles now, so at 17 and a half I have to start looking. But yeah, I don't know, I'm kind of like Stacy. I like, especially when you're going by a guardrail that's really close and the wind is just right and you can hear the sound of the gears, and that's just special.
Power lines on a hot, humid day, and you go into the power lines.
Well, I'm gonna say here that Pan Ohio, we provide cue sheets. We try to provide the best route marking possible.
Yeah, follow the signs.
And we do have a lot of SAG and ham operators out there that are keeping an eye on the route, including one dedicated sweep that is making sure that nobody gets dropped or left behind. So if you do decide on Pan Ohio, you want to ride with cue sheet, I know people that tape them to their top bar of the bike and they just let it go, and that's certainly an option. That's what you like.
So, you know, what I'm hearing is there's not really a right or wrong answer to that, but practice. Like, whatever you think you want to do, try it on your training rides, see what happens and see what you like, find what works for you. I think we probably want to.
There's nothing wrong with getting lost on a training ride.
Exactly. Exactly. It's okay. You know, especially since you probably do have your phone in your pocket somewhere and you can find your way back. You know, I think when I started writing, I didn't have a smartphone. And when I'd get lost, I'd be kind of lost for a while until I found my way back. But again, on a training, not a big
She
deal.
didn't have a Garmin until last year. Now she thinks they're amazing.
My secrets. I got the Garmin to get the radar. Okay.
To be fair, she used a smartphone all those years before that. But
I just want to ask one more formal question, and then I'll let you share any last minute thoughts. But I think Leanne posted, thank you for posting in the chat, a link to our 24-week training plan that is designed. Carrie McCoy, as a coach, she runs Just Try. She's a professional triathlete and coach, and she's been working with us for many years to provide training programs. Fun fact about Carrie McCoy, she once had this coach herself named Bob Duncan. So we're in the presence of the coach's coach here, but Carrie put together a great program for us. If you haven't had a chance to look at that, I recommend you download it. We'll share the link again, but Leanne posted it in the chat. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Bob or to panohioinfo@cancer.org about it. And obviously we're past the 24-week point now, but Carrie's recommendation is start with the first couple weeks of the plan to ease into it and then jump ahead to where we are now. We're 5 months out. That is still plenty of time to get ready, even if we're not quite 6 months out. Start from where you are. So I think there's a lot of tools out there to read about how to prepare physically for it. But I think one of the hardest aspects is maybe the mental thing. So I just want to talk about mental training briefly. Start with you, Bob, on this one. How do you prepare mentally? Or how do you tell someone who's never done this, that maybe doesn't believe that they could do this? There's lots of tools to tell you physically, do this many reps or ride this many miles or be in this zone or whatever. There's a lot of research on that, but can you share any tips on mental preparation?
Your body is amazing and it can do things far beyond what you recognize or what we as a society think is possible. And you don't even have to believe it. You just have to pedal. And I think success breeds success. When you do that 30-mile ride and you get that done, then a 50 doesn't seem out of the question. And you knock a 50 out and you're like, well, I can do 50. I could probably do 75, and you knock that out. So I think letting people know that no matter how far no matter what they think the limit is, they're wrong. It's farther down the road, and then give them baby steps to prove to themselves that they are amazing and they can do great things. I think that's the two keys that I have, which probably are not the best by the book.
That's okay. Maria, what about you?
Well, that's one of my strengths. Even though my mind can fail at sometimes, I do a lot of coaching for the mind, because you can have the best coach, you can have the perfect conditions, all the gadgets in the world, all the training by the book, and if your mind fails, you're not finishing that race. Two things that helped me a lot were identifying something that you feel comfortable with. For example, in my case, I love to lay down on a hammock and look at the sky, but with trees in the middle, and the wind and the trees, that for me just chills me. So you can start by, on a regular day, in the morning, at lunchtime, in the afternoon, before you go to bed, do breathing exercises. You don't have to go for like an hour. You just do 10 inhale, exhale, close your eyes, and then think about those images that bring you peace. And that, believe it or not, whenever you're anxious or nervous, or whenever you're feeling on the bike that you cannot go any longer, or that you can push more or go 1 more mile, shifting those thoughts will just make a difference. So how do I shift them? By identifying things that I can think about and just that will bring me down. The other thing that I do, it's math. So I crunch my numbers. For example, if you say 300 miles, it's like 300, and it feels like even heavy. So I think, okay, 300 is 3 times 100. 100 by default is a lot smaller and feels a lot less heavy than 300. Okay, so when you think about, oh, it's just 3 times 100, you're thinking about the 3 times instead of like 300. And then, okay, the first 100, how can I tackle it? Well, I'm going to do 4 times 25. Now, how small is 25 compared to 300? And you're just focusing on those 25 and you're just going to do it 4 times. 4 times is super small. Okay, so 4 times 25, there you have a century. Now I'm down 1/3. 1/3 is super tiny. And I'm hoping I'm not driving you all crazy with all these numbers, but it's just so you can understand those numbers are smaller than 300 and whatever amount of miles. Okay, so play with the numbers that way. So you can, tackle little amounts of distances
something believable
at a time.
Brian
Correct.
added a comment in the chat that's very spot on for us, just one water stop at a time. Bob mentioned we have water stops every time.
That's a good one.
20 miles, 15 to 20 miles ish. So it's like, you're not riding from Cleveland to Cincinnati. You're going to ride from where we start to the next water stop. And then you're going to do it again and again. And I mean, I think sometimes even on that, it's like, I'm not even going to get to the water stop. I'm just going to ride another mile.
Yeah.
Then I'll ride another mile. For a while, I'm like, I'm going to ride to that tree.
Yeah.
Then after that, I'm going to ride to the next mailbox.
And if nothing else works, and this is on the emotional side. So I lost my dad to cancer, and I always think whenever I'm on that moment where I'm hating my life and asking myself 1,000 times, why do I keep signing up for these things, blah, blah, blah. Because I do have a moment. I have like 2 in every race, and the people that crew for me know those moments. I will take a moment and I will think about all those people that can actually not do what I'm doing. And I will say, oh my gosh, you got to stop whining. And I don't say whining, I say another word, but I'm not going to say it here. So just think about the people that you might be doing it for, or the people that can actually do it. And then think, okay, I can do these for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, and I think that is a perfect way to bring this back around to the mission and like why we're here. Even if you're here not because of Pan Ohio or for another ACS endurance event, but just because you wanted to learn something about longer cycling rides, bringing it back to why you're doing it, I think is a very powerful place to bring that around. So thank you for that. I guess I want to just give you each another moment. If there's anything that you feel like you wanted to say that didn't get in there, obviously we could talk about training for days and hours. We're going to have a series of emails from the coach coming up. We always have coaches available if you have questions. But I just think bringing that back to riding for those who can't, and remembering why we ride and remembering who we're riding for really can carry you farther. But I'll just give you, Maria, if you just want to take a couple minutes, is there anything else you want to share that hasn't come up in our questions so far tonight?
I don't know. I mean, I can be here for hours because I'm Hispanic and I talk for you guys and for myself, but feel free to reach out. This is what I do for a living. You don't, I mean, I'm doing this for fun at the moment for you guys. So don't feel that I'm not going to reply or respond to you. So if you have any questions, any concerns, please feel free to reach out. I have extensive moments that I have gone through, very bad moments that I can use. So there's nothing that you can tell me that will scare me or I will not have an answer for. Okay. So feel free to reach out.
Earlier, sorry. So someone asked earlier too, if you're on Strava or if they could follow you to be inspired. Do you mind if we share your info when we send the recording of this out?
No, you're fine. You're fine. I'm on Strava. I have a email as a coach. I have Instagram, Facebook, all the good stuff out there. And working now on a web page.
Awesome. Well, if you don't mind sharing some of that in the chat while we hear some last words from Bob.
I think we've done a good job of covering the overview. I think you can go down rabbit holes on any of these topics, and if anybody wants to, I love this. I love the science part. I read studies as for relaxation. It's kind of what I do. Somebody goes, what do you think about this supplement? And I'll go to do the studies on the core ingredients. It's just what I like to do. I think the big thing is this is a great ride. It's a great opportunity to meet people, to challenge yourself no matter what level you're at. And I'm just so excited to be a part of it. I know I'm going to be working my butt off and I don't get to ride my bike, but I'm still really amped to be a part of it. I am not on Strava because I have this fragile male ego, and when I see what other people are doing, I think that I need to do more, and then yeah, it gets really ugly, like hospitalized once. So we
Yeah.
we train on our own and we keep track of what we're happy with. So that's it.
Don't be like Bob.
Don't be like Bob, exactly.
Be like Bob is what he's learned, which, again, is finding what works for you. The social aspect is motivating to some people. But comparison can be the thief of your joy. So if it works for you, great. If it doesn't work for you, great. Find what works for you. But no, we've loved having you. Thank you so much to both of you for sharing. And, like both of them said, we have resources available, whether you're a POHR writer or not. If you have questions, please reach out. Best way to reach everybody is probably panohioinfo@cancer.org, and we can field your questions appropriately. Or again, we'll make sure we get everyone's info to share too, as far as Strava profiles and stuff. But there's Maria. Thank you for posting her email, Instagram, Strava, Facebook links, and all of that. So feel free to follow and reach out and continue to be inspired. I think both of you are very inspiring with what you've accomplished, and we loved having a chance to learn from you. And again, I just hope that whatever level you're at and whatever you aspire to do, that you found something helpful in this tonight, and that you continue to be inspired by it and remember why we're writing. So thank you, everyone. Let's give a big round of applause to our panelists tonight. We do have a couple event announcements.
Thank you.
To get to that raffle too. But yeah, anyone else have any last thoughts they want to share? This is the time you can come off mute and share some things.
Well, while everyone's getting their nerve up, I'll just my final thought is to kind of echo what we talked about in our last topic here. Hardly anyone has ever finished anything they've ever did with nothing left in the tank. You've always got something left in the tank. You run out of mental fuel long before you run out of physical fuel. So I believe everyone can do it. Everybody can do whatever they set out to do. You gotta play the mind game. And I think we ran out of the mind game tonight before we ran out of topics or comments or subjects or whatever.
We could talk for hours.
We could go on for hours. Anyone else with anything?
All right.
Guess that's a no.
Well, thank you. I'm going to just run really quickly through a couple of event announcements over here. Again, if you're here from an event other than the POHR Pride, thank you for joining us, and we're still going to do a raffle, so stick around. I will run through this pretty quickly. I guess just want to make sure that everyone is aware of our registration. We are at the $225 registration fee, and I think the note got dropped off of here, but if you are a brand new writer and you're not registered yet, please email panohioinfo@cancer.org before you register, because we do have a discount code for first-time writers. And again, if you think you're not up for 4 days, we do have some great 2-day and 1-day options, or our virtual Create Your Own 328 program, or you could sign up for free just as a supporter or a volunteer. If you want to join us as a volunteer, we need lots of those too. So check out all the info at pohr.org if you're interested in joining us this summer. And the other program we have is the registration gifting. So if you're a writer and you want to convince someone else to join you, a nice way to do that is to gift them their registration fee. So you can buy a registration gift at givesignup.org/ticket event/POHR. We also have a scholarship fund. So if you don't have someone specific that you want to invite to do POHR, you can buy an anonymous registration gift, and we will match that up with someone who wants to do POHR, but who has a financial need and can't cover the registration fee. So we never want the registration fee to be anyone's barrier to completing POHR. So on this Give Sign Up, you can gift a registration to someone you know, or to our scholarship fund. The other thing we would like,
Stacy, I'm going to interrupt you for 2 seconds because Leanne will appreciate this little girl here. Leanne, I hope Leanne is still here, because this girl, I got her from Leanne. This is Mary. And she's like 15 pounds, and she was tiny when I got her from Leanne. I don't know if you can see it because I know the light is not like.
Yes, I can.
Oh,
baby.
awesome.
There's your baby. Sorry.
Now is the time when everyone needs to bring their furry friends onto their Zoom window with them, so we can all see and be delighted.
Screen sharing.
Yeah. We are delighted to hear from Carrie today, and we do like to feature at our events and on social media, why I ride, why I volunteer, and supporter spotlights. So if you'd like to share your story, please head to bit.ly/your POHR story, or if you're a registered rider, you should have gotten an email about that too, but we'd love to know why you do Pan Ohio and why it's important to you as well. I'm happy to hear from other ACS endurance athletes from other events too. I'm super excited that y'all joined us. Training resources, we mentioned that our 24-week training plan is available. You can get that at bit.ly/24WK training plan. You can also go to our main homepage, pohr.org, and down at the bottom under our forms and documents, you can find it there. If you have any questions, again, feel free to email panohioinfo@cancer.org. And the other thing we really wanted to announce today is our next events coming up in person. 328 day. So March 28th is a special day to us because 328 was the classic historic mileage for the first Pan Ohio Hope Ride route. So 328 is a special number to us. And we're really excited that on March 28th this year, we're going to have events simultaneously in 5 markets across Ohio. So not just Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati, but also in the Akron, Canton area and in Dayton. So really hope that any of you that are in Ohio can join us somewhere. Bottle House in Cleveland, Missing Falls Brewing Company in Akron, Getaway Brewing Company in Dublin in the Columbus area, Loose Ends Brewing in Centerville near Dayton, and Wooden Cask Brewing in Newport, Kentucky, just across the river in Cincinnati there. So at least a couple of these, Getaway and Wooden Cask, are doing charity give backs on a portion of our purchases that night. We're working on a couple of the others, but at least for some of those, you'll be also making a difference, and we hope you can come join. Akron is having a ride at Dirty River ahead of their social, so you can come out a little bit early for a short, is that a towpath ride, Brian?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so short ride on the towpath trail near Akron to kind of get a little warm up ahead of that social. Would love to see some of you out there. And again, if you're a registered rider, you'll be getting an email with all these details. If you're not, you can follow us on Facebook and we'll have events for all these put up and stay in the loop that way. So I'm going to turn this over to Olivia, who has taken our diligent attendance for us to draw 2 raffle prizes. First, we will draw for 20 extra incentive points for someone. If you win this and you're not one of our registered Pan Ohio riders, you can give it away to someone else if you want. So Olivia, can you draw a name for incentive points?
Yes, I put everyone into this like digital wheel. So, all right.
Digital wheels, fun.
It's a step up from my like papers in a hat.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry if I mispronounced anyone's name, but Scott Longer.
Scott Longer. All right. He's one of our brand new riders in the Columbus area. That's super exciting. Congratulations, Scott. And then one more raffle.
Thank you.
What's that?
I said thank you.
Yeah.
No problem. All right. And then next we have
a swag package of some POHR and determination swag.
Oh gosh. All right. I'm going to butcher this. Penny Endlich?
What is it?
Penny Endlich?
Endlich. Oh, yeah, close
Endlich.
enough.
Hey, congratulations, Kenny. Kenny, if you could make sure you send a direct message to Olivia with your contact info and address to send some swag to, that would be awesome. And with that, we're kind of concluded with our formal program, but we're happy to stick around for a while if anyone just wants to share more stories, socialize, whatever you want to do. I'll stop the recording so the good stories can be told now. But again, I just want to thank you all for attending tonight. Hopefully this was valuable. We will be sharing a recording for anyone that couldn't make it tonight, so watch out for that, or if you want to go back and listen to some of that again. And feel free to reach out with any questions you have anytime between now and Pan Ohio or beyond. So thanks, everyone. Talk amongst yourselves.
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing folks at up in Dublin. So I'm going to call it a day.